Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the witnesses that are here today. I have two field agents here, a headquarters agent, a lawyer, and a supervisor as well, as I understand it. I want to pick back up on where my colleague, Mr. Castle, was when he left his question time. I want to talk about the resources that you had available to you and, practically speaking, how you used those resources. Then I want to ask you to walk me through, even though to a certain extent you've done that already, is certain ways that you communicated. For example, and I'll start with the Phoenix agent here if I could. When you sent your memo, your EC, to headquarters, how many different people, I don't want names, but how many different people did you send that memo to?
All right, this is Bud Cramer of the Joint House Inquiry into the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks. He's asking this question to an anonymous field agent from the Phoenix FBI office. And like in the previous video, this is Kenneth Williams, who drafted the Phoenix memo. That's the EC he's talking about, the electronics cable.
Six individuals at headquarters.
And the way your communication system works, do you know if all of those received the memo?
I personally do not know if they all.
Well, over a dozen agents received the memo, but it was never passed on to the acting director at the time, Thomas Pickard, or to the eventual director, Robert Mueller, and it wasn't seen by George Bush until May of 2002.
Received it. The way the system works.
Did you hear from any of those individuals?
No.
All right. Do you determine yourself in the field office whether who you send it to? In other words, is that called uploading? You decide who to send it to?
Yeah, I decide who to put on the attention line of my communications. Yes.
And you can block as well. You can decide to send it to only one person and not to share it with other individuals as well.
No, that's not my intention. If I put somebody on there that I want to go to, I want it to get to that person and only those persons. So I'm not, I don't try to block anybody from getting anything.
All right. Yeah. All right. And did you expect to hear from those six individuals?
Well, this is a question that I've been asked before. I sent this communication as a routine electronic communication because there was no immediate action required on it. There was no terrorist threat information contained in the electronic communication. And I just wanted to send it to them for their consideration. Prior to my sending it, though, I did contact a senior FBI analyst. And I said, hey, these are my concerns, my suspicions. Who do you think, who do you recommend I send this to? And this particular analyst gave me the names of the individuals who are listed on the EC.
All right.
Okay, now the Phoenix memo, again, is basically information coming from a confidential informant under Ken Williams, whose name is Henry Ellen, who is a Muslim convert who went by his Islamic name, Abu Yusuf. Ellen had befriended many people in the Muslim community, and he basically reported back to Kent Williams about suspicious individuals who were training at flight schools and who wanted to, I guess, create or cause a terrorist act regarding using the planes as weapons. This information was ascertained near the final years of the 1990s, 98, 2000, in which Ken Williams drafted his memo in July of 2001.
And now, if I could, the headquarters agent now, could I ask you to tell, you came into this particular unit when?
I came into this unit in approximately mid-May of 2001.
But you have 15 years experience
That's correct.
In the field and at headquarters as well. Could you comment in some detail on the state of technology as you found it, particularly there at headquarters?
If I could, I'll go back and when an EC is sent from the field to headquarters, it is, a lead is set to a particular unit. at headquarters. It will not be set to an individual. The
Right, and that unit is usually the radical fundamentalist unit.
attention line is once the communication gets into the building,
Or the counter-terrorist.
theoretically, it would be brought to the attention of those people. But in terms of it serving as an electronic means of providing it to them, that does not work that way.
Right. And then who determines once it comes into the building? Our concern is, and we've had an excellent summary from Eleanor Hill and the staff before you were made available to us today. And as you know, we've had prior opportunities to get into these matters. But what I'm concerned about is the culture at FBI and how you communicate, why certain people get certain messages. Is that a resource problem? Does resource mean people? Does resource mean technology? What does it mean? And as I observe it from the summaries that I've had available to me, the communication in this case, the EC from the Phoenix agent went to the weakest link at headquarters, and then a person there determines where it goes from there.
It did not necessarily go to the weakest link. The way it would take place within headquarters is that the lead would arrive there. It would be given to a particular person as a lead. It would be set to an individual. In this case, it was set to the IOS, an intelligence operations specialist. Those are the people that do the work. That's where the rubber meets the road in terms of headquarters handling a specific lead sent from the field.
All right. And then you're in the RDU unit, right?
That's correct.
And that's an operational unit.
It's correct. The RFU is an operational unit.
And the UBL unit?
Is a second operational unit.
Right. And then the analysis unit is a separate unit, correct?
The operational units have what we would call investigative operations specialists. Those are tactical analysts. Those are analysts that work specific case issues. They're the people that handle leads that headquarters needs to handle. They're the people that write the FISA packages. They're the people who are moving specific cases forward. Apart from those IOSs, you have a second group of analysts known as intelligence research specialists. Those are IRSs. They are not within the operational groups. They are in a separate, at the time, pre-9/11, they were in a separate division. Those are the people that would be expected to do strategic type analysis.
And how is information routed to those individuals before 9/11, before we've reviewed what happened and what we could do differently?
The field could have sent it directly to the IRSs. They could have sent it directly to the division that was responsible for strategic analysis. Or in this case, in the case of Phoenix, as I remember it and I see it, is that the lead was set for the operational group, the counterterrorism division, into the operational units within the counterterrorism division. And then it would have been for those IOSs or for the supervisors to recognize that there might be a need for strategic analysis and then to move it to the strategic analytical group. That could be done electronically by reproducing another electronic communication and setting a specific lead for the strategic analysts, or it could have been done via an email or a telephone call and just walking a hard copy to them.
All right. In the case of the Phoenix EC, your EC, the iOS, who decides which iOS gets that memo? How is that decided? What's the process?
It's done based on area of responsibility. So if a particular analyst is responsible for a particular field division or a particular subject matter, then the individual who is going into the computer would recognize that this particular iOS has responsibilities for this program area, or it might be a case number. It might be that all Phoenix communications are handled by this particular iOS. So that lead would then have been set to the particular analyst that was responsible for the case or the program matter. So the attention line is not necessarily significant. It could be that the wrong person was put on the attention line, in which case the individual setting that lead would have moved it to the proper iOS.
Well,
Right, now listen, not every FBI agency in the United States had a bin Laden unit. FBI field headquarters in Washington, D.C. had a bin Laden unit, and um, there was a bin Laden unit in Phoenix and a bin Laden unit in New York. Um, but that's because there were prior instances where bin Laden had cells in certain cities, where Wadi al-Hajj, who was a financial courier and marketer for bin Laden in Nairobi, he lived in Arizona. So there's a link. In terms of New York, I think that's pretty obvious. 93 attacks happened there. You had the Al Farouk Mosque in Brooklyn, the Al Khifa Refugee Center, which was a block down from the Al Farouk Mosque, which was responsible for recruiting um, foreign Arabs into the Afghan Soviet War in 1979. Uh, there was a radical fundamentalist cell in New Jersey at the um, Masjid El Salam Mosque in Jersey City, headed by Omar Abdul Rahman, who usually went to Al Farouk Mosque in Brooklyn. So there were some links, direct links between international terrorist cells, bin Laden, but not every city where the FBI is employed had a bin Laden unit.
information is that in this case, the EC was assigned to a particular iOS because that was the first name on the list.
I think that she also, why exactly it was set to her, I'm not exactly sure, but I think there was also that she had some of the program responsibilities that was addressed within that EC.
Right. If we could, back to the Phoenix agent, then your EC as well went to the UBL unit, and you never heard from them. Is that correct?
No, that's correct. Senator, if I can make a point or.
Right, and the reason why was because those people found the information to be speculative. Even though, again, like in my previous video, there was prior intelligence warnings from the FBI regarding sleeper cells inside the United States who were wanting to use airplanes as the weapon themselves to crash into selective targets inside the United States. And that was through the information that was given to Philippines investigators when they interrogated Abdul Hakim Murad, who was involved with Ramzi Youssef and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed with the Bajinka plot, which was the bomb, which was a multi-tiered operation. And one of the tiers was to hijack a plane and crash it into CIA Langley.
Sir,
And that was in 1996.
the reason why I went to the UBLU unit and the RFU unit is because the nature of the subject under investigation. We couldn't put him into a particular category. So the decision that I made after conferring with the person I contacted in headquarters was let's send it to both units, the Osama bin Laden unit and the radical fundamentalism unit.
And were you aware prior to 9/11 that headquarters had closed the lead and that they were not taking any additional actions at the time based on your communication?
No, I was not.
If I could speak to that. The lead is not stated as closed. The lead is stated that they will reconvene on this matter at a later time. Those operational specialists handled the immediate actionable items that were before them. And then what they wanted to do was to reflect to Phoenix Division, in my mind, what they wanted to do was to reflect to Phoenix Division that they had received the lead and that they were looking at it, they were aware of it, and they were going to act on it at a later date.
Right. The New York agents interviewed stated that the Phoenix EC did not resonate with them and that they found it speculative. Why do you think that is? Why don't you think they took seriously a memo like this? Was that because they were the leading counterterrorism office and Phoenix was more or less an island, as you've stated it out there?
Well, sir, I can't speak for why my colleagues thought the way they did when they received that. I don't know why they did. I've seen other reasons why they claim they didn't want to take action on it, to include that they had seen other people coming in for training for Osama bin Laden.
This is really shocking, to say the least, that New York, the epicenter of the terrorist attacks in 1993, would basically say that Ken Williams' Phoenix memo was speculation at best. And this is coming from a confidential informant who has been an informant for Ken Williams over 20 years.
I wish they would have taken a look at it, because it would have been nice to know.
But you, to this day, you don't know why.
No, I don't.
Respond to. How about headquarters?
I'm sorry, I do not know why.
And this is for Phoenix as well as headquarters. We're made aware now of an astounding summary of information about terrorist groups, reports of terrorist groups that were planning to use airplanes as weapons. Were those reports available to you in Phoenix? Were you aware of those? Is that partially why you responded to write this summary of information that you were trying to pass up the line that was ignored?
I wasn't aware of all of the situations that you discussed, sir. I did have an interest in Islamic extremists using or attacking the civil aviation industry due to prior and previous investigations I had worked on. That answers your question.
You know, Hani Hanjour, who went to the University of Arizona to study engineering in 1992, basically was the alleged pilot of Flight 77. Not to mention that, again, it goes back to the Bajinka plot reports given by Philippines National Lead Investigator Rodolfo Mendoza. He gave that information to the FBI. Who he gave that to, I don't know, but the director at the time was Louis Freeh. Whether Louis Freeh got that, I'm sure he did, because the Bajinka plot was an international plot and it was widespread knowledge. Associated Press, New York Times reported on it. So I'm pretty sure the FBI's main director got the reports from the Philippines, and they did nothing with it. And that's 6 years prior to the 9/11 attacks. We're talking 1995.
The full cooperations with the United States insofar as international cooperations against terrorism. And I know that we have passed that information to our American counterparts.
So it's amazing that in that 6 year period, if you want to say 5.5 year period, where, hey, why don't we inform the FAA, the Federal Aviation Association, and the FBI about the threat levels coming from international organizations that want to hijack the aircraft. Because even when the FAA testified before the 9/11 Commission and the Joint House inquiry, they basically said that we never got any prior warnings prior to 9/11 attacks. So basically, the FBI did nothing with the Bajinka plot reports.
All right. And to the headquarters agent, did you see or hear Phoenix EC prior to 9/11? Did you yourself have any experience with that?
I have no recollection of ever reading that communication. I did not it was not brought to my attention before 9/11. And when it was brought to my attention post 9/11, that was the first time that I really tuned in on it.
But you were one of the 6 listed that the memo was addressed to. Is that correct?
My name was on the attention line.
All right. And how today would that be handled differently?
I'm not sure if that would be handled differently today in terms of a name appearing on an attention line. I can tell you that based on my position, that my name is on hundreds, if not thousands of documents in that building that will probably not be brought to my attention.
If I could, I'd like to.
Yeah, but let's put this in its context. There's not going to be thousands of documents and files regarding international criminal syndicates like Al Qaeda wanting to hijack aircraft and crash them into selective American targets. I mean, that red flag was going on since 1998 when bin Laden gave his second fatwa to attack Americans wherever you find them. And like there was an inquiry by Carl Levin where he tells two anonymous agents that in 1998, the reports were that they were wanting to hijack the aircraft in 1998. This is not something that's new to you at your doorstep. The FBI was aware that these people wanted to hijack the aircraft. So that would have took precedent over anything else, over a wanted bank robber. I think at this time there was over 1,500 people on the FBI watch list. But this certainly would have took precedent.
Get you to comment about technology and this process, because we're talking about communication, we're talking about names of people and a system that responds to that. And I want to know how the technology figures into that. And I understand from the headquarters agent, from a summary of information about your statements in the past, that you found the technology inadequate, that you found it not very useful. Would you give me more specifics and tell me how you think that has affected the way communication occurs, if it has affected that?
The computers, the systems in our building are very cumbersome. I have heard from talking to analysts, for example, that on a given day, you can search a name or a subject within ACS and get a set of results. The next day, or a second analyst could go into the system and request the same information and get a completely different set of results. I cannot explain that. My experience comes primarily from what I am told by the supervisors and the analysts that work for me. Another very significant piece that really needs to be brought to the attention of this committee is that the counterterrorism division within FBI is a part of the intelligence community. The counterterrorism community, the intelligence community, primarily works in a classification level at a TS level, or in the case of CIA, we'll frequently put HUMINT on communications. Our systems do not go to that level of classification. Our computer system is only at a secret level. So communications coming into our building from NSA, from CIA, cannot be integrated into our existing databases. So if an analyst is working, say, on a subject in Phoenix Division, and they run that person's name through our databases, they will not retrieve information on that person that other agencies may also have. It's required of them to get up, walk over to a different set of, or a different computer that has access to a different database and search that name in that database. In the two databases will never come together and be integrated. So it's a setup for failure in terms of keeping a strategic picture of what we're up against.
Well, I
That's because, especially with the FBI, there's different divisions and different units, and there's different hard drives and different machinery handling specific things. So just like this agent said, that's the problem. That's no longer the problem today. Everything is integrated. Everything, even their phones are integrated into the systems, and their systems are linked with the NSA, the CIA, the even um, other like counterterrorism, uh, INS, immigration. It's all integrated now.
happen to be on the Appropriations Committee as well, and I'm on the Commerce Justice State Appropriations Subcommittee, and we listen to the FBI every year, and I'm an old prosecutor, and I want to give you the tools that you need in order to do the job that we want you to do. But we ask every year, what do you need in terms of technology? Is this a money issue? Is it just a technology overload issue? Is the agency so subdivided that you're having a hard time getting a handle on that? And honestly, I can't read between the lines as to how. Now, this may not be something for you to answer here today, but I'm trying to understand from the user point of view of what technology you have, what you don't have, and how that might play into this. The trilogy system that you made reference to, is it anticipated that that will help reorganize to a certain extent the way communications occur?
I do not have the expertise to speak to that.
All right. Now, if I could, because time is limited, we talked, or it was brought up earlier, that there's 68,000 outstanding or unassigned counterterrorism leads in the FBI's electronic automated case system. So, and that dates back to 1995. Are we making any progress? What are we doing to improve that? That, to me, sounds intolerable.
I have tried to take that on in terms of looking at that problem from both the UBL and the RFU unit standpoint. We're getting through that system now. I think we need to make it very clear, though, because there's 68,000 leads outstanding at that point. That does not mean that those leads were not handled. Frequently, what's happened is you have a duplication of lead. For example, a lead will be set for FBI headquarters to both the counterterrorism division and the UBL unit. Well, the operational unit that would cover that lead is the UBL unit. They would maybe clear that lead out, but it would remain in the system from the counterterrorism division's lead bucket. So even though the lead is shown in the computer as not covered by counterterrorism division, it is covered by the operational unit. So there's a lot of duplication in that. That's one. Two is, as I've said in my earlier testimony, is that the system is very cumbersome, and people unfortunately have just become very frustrated with it to the point where they have somewhat
They have
given
no
up.
confidence in it.
They have no
confidence. They're working around it, is what it sounds like.
That's exactly the case.
And I would
sir.
assume that leads are falling through the cracks.
We hope not. What will frequently happen, for example, is even though a field division sets a lead to headquarters in ACS, they're also emailing that communication to the particular FBI headquarters SSA. So they're getting it and working on it via the email, but not necessarily within the ACS system.
Right? See how slow that is, right? That's a lot of leads to follow, right? So and also those leads could lead to a dead end. They could be false leads. These are, there's some leads that came from confidential informants. How good is the lead? This is like a slow to a crawl type of process. And that's what the FBI was facing in the 90s. Now, just imagine that in the early 90s, where they were woefully unprepared for radical fundamentalist terrorism. That's what happened in New York, for sure, in the early 90s. The only people leading the counterterrorism unit then were in New York was John Antisev and Louis Napoli. And then you had Frank Pellegrino come later, and then John O'Neill came much later, 1990, I think was 97, 98, right around there. And that's when I got the I-49 squad, Ali Soufan, Jack Cloonan, legendary agents, some of the best counterterrorism agents, in the world, were in New York at the time. But I mean, that's a lot of data for the FBI, and especially the counterterrorism unit. And the counterterrorism unit didn't have many. Even when John O'Neill came, yeah, he expanded it a bit, but John O'Neill once told his squad that how many Arabic speakers did the FBI have in 1999, and he basically said there was six, I think, six or seven in the country. So, what does that tell you about how the FBI treated Arab fundamentalism? Well, they didn't take it seriously at all, even after the 1993 World Trade Center bombing and the U.S. Embassy bombings.
It's almost up, but I do want to work in one more question, and this is on the Moussaoui investigation. You said at headquarters that this was a priority and that you considered Moussaoui to be a threat. Did you alert other field offices to the matter in order to determine whether there were similar cases in other field offices?
I can tell you that a September 4 teletype was written from headquarters. It was sent to 2 FBI field divisions, and it was sent to elements of the intelligence community. It was not set to numerous other field divisions, and that's just the nature of how the FBI operated in a pre-9/11 environment, namely that we were investigation driven. The investigation was in Minneapolis, it was in Oklahoma City. As leads developed that would have included other field divisions, then it would have opened, and we would have started to move the investigation out to other divisions. But in a pre-9/11 environment, we were clearly an investigation-driven agency, and unless a particular field division needed to see it, they would not.
Which has to change. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right. Now, this is the thing about the Moussaoui case is that it basically started in Oklahoma. And if you want to go even further, before that, it started in Germany, right? Because that's where he went to visit. It's where he lived for a time. He went to a mosque that was led by a notorious Islamist and radical fundamentalist in Abu Hamza, who's currently doing life in prison here in the United States for conspiring to commit mass terrorism. And Moussaoui basically came to Oklahoma City, met with some members of the uh, Masjid al Salam Mosque in Oklahoma City. Um, Mitchell Gray did a fantastic book. I interviewed him called I Heard You Were Going on Jihad, which spoke more about this issue. But Moussaoui then went with Hussein al-Attas, a member of the mosque, to Minnesota, where they were trying to learn how to fly at this flight school that was headed under Clarence Prevost, and he was captured for being too suspicious, and they arrested him in a hotel room. But that was just pertaining to two states, two cities, Oklahoma City and Minnesota, Eagan, Minnesota, uh, where he was arrested by Harry Samet. So that's right, but there was no communications sent to the global FBI field office units in the United States because it was specifically just for these two cities. Um, and even that investigation was inhibited because they needed a foreign a FISA warrant to look through his belongings because they were foreign nationals, and they weren't approved for this FISA warrant before September 11th, and it was his laptop and other belongings that were inside the hotel room. Um, and so that was that. Um, so that's the end of the video. And so, as you can see, the FBI, even just weeks prior to September 11 attacks, when it comes to counterterrorism, they were woefully understaffed. They had a lot of information, basically, but they weren't accurate in that specific information, especially um, the Bin Laden investigation, shoulda took precedent, and the supervisors of these cities like Arizona, like Minnesota, like Oklahoma City, New York, New Jersey, did not act on the intelligence by the FBI. And there was a ton of intelligence here. That goes back years, and they just didn't act on it.